straight up. Blackness, aye. Who tell the truth? Mark Benscop, defend the ghetto youth. Mark Benscop, radio station is the fruit. Mark Benscop, straight up from the root. Mark Benscop, who tell the truth? Mark Benscop, defend the ghetto youth. Mark Benscop, radio station is the fruit. Mark Benscop, straight up from the root. Mark Benscop, I do it for the love, him not do it for no money. Straight up, him attack, educating everybody. Big up my friends and big up my family. Turn on the radio, catch the vibes, it's integrity. Straight up, Benscop stands for unity. One people, one nation, one destiny. Free up the truth in the air, even the blind can see. The deaf can hear, the dumb can talk, the cripple can walk. Boom. Who tell the truth? Mark Benscop, defend the ghetto youth. Mark Benscop, radio station is the fruit. Mark Benscop, straight up from the root. Mark Benscop, who tell the truth? Mark Benscop, defend the ghetto youth. Mark Benscop, radio station is the fruit. Mark Benscop, straight up from the root. Mark Benscop, we have to gather wrong, grab a seat and sit down, pay attention, education, liberation, we have to stand strong. Benscop upon the radio, lively up the program. Everybody call somebody and let them turn and tune and pon the radio and catch the boom song. We boom it up already, we have to boom it up again. Expose and reveal him. Who tell the truth? Mark Benscop, defend the.
Hello, this is attorney Shellen Washington, owner and founder of the Washington Law Firm, located at 455 Utica Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. We're specialized in medical malpractice, personal injuries, matrimonial law, and landlord and tenant. If you're in need of legal representation, please give us a call today. The number to call is 718-877-3100. Consultation is free at no cost to you. So call us today to see if we can be of any assistance to your legal needs. Again, the phone number to call us is 718-877-3100.
All right, good evening. It's just 8 minutes after 9 o'clock. My name is Mark Benscop. To all of you who have just joined the link, join the live, thank you so much. And for those of you who will be sharing the link, we appreciate it. That's all we'll say once, and that's it. All right, so what's happening this evening? We got here, according to Roysdale Ford, that is the Senior Counsel Roysdale Ford, Member of Parliament. He's accusing, and rightly so, the installed regime. He is, I repeat, accusing the installed regime of this. He says that the Guyana government accused, well, this is according to Village Voice, the Guyana government, whatever government they have there, accused of deliberate attempt to stifle the inevitable outcome of the elections petition. That's exactly what's happening. That the regime, Irfan Ali and Bharat Jagdev and the entire PPP cliques at Freedom House and at the office of the president, they are afraid of the elections results. That's what they're afraid of. That is why they did every single thing to stymie the process. Forget about this whole thing and they're jumping on the mountaintop and yelling on the top of their breath or their voices and everything to say SOPs. SOPs. Now, we haven't been hearing anything about show your SOPs any longer because it's no longer relevant for them. They got through, which is the rigging of the elections. That is exactly what they've done. Then this vagabond Irfan Ali is to say to Norton that Norton has to confess his sins. He, Norton, has to confess his sin to a Paku like Irfan Ali. Now, who the heck is Irfan Ali? That people have to confess their sins to him. He, Irfan Ali, needs to confess his sins to the entire nation. And whenever he sees his God, whomever his God is, if ever he has a God or he believes in such, he needs to confess to his God about his sins. And trust me, lots and lots of sins, Irfan Ali. Lots and lots of sins. Good evening to all of you again. My name is Mark Benchop, and we thank the Village Voice for this article. Village Voice has been exposing them. Village Voice, come on, guys. You got to go on a daily basis to see what the Village Voice is saying. Don't just go on the Village Voice and, okay, let's see what the Village Voice is saying. Share some of their articles as well. Share their articles with your friends and everyone. Don't share PPP propaganda. Lots and lots of propaganda coming from the PPP's mouthpieces, social media, and so forth. Don't share that. Share media outlets such as the Village Voice. You've got to do it. And this is a good article where Senior Counsel Roysdale Ford is saying that the Guyana government, and the article is saying here, Guyana government accused of deliberate attempt to stifle the inevitable outcome of the elections petition. Story done. Thank you, Village Voice. Now, let me ask you guys, and what is your take on all of these things? You've just heard that they're stifling. They do not want the elections petitions to be heard. They have done everything possible to stymie that process. Of course, I'll get your take on that. Our executive producer just informed me that we will have for a few minutes this evening attorney at law, Shelon Washington. Now, Mr. Roysdale Ford is in transit. He's traveling at this time, and he asked that I apologize on his behalf for not being able to make it, but he will be here tomorrow night. Okay, Rhonda Lane and others, tomorrow night. So good evening again to all of you guys. We are going to rock and roll until 10 o'clock. Miss Washington is going to be with us. Attorney at law, Washington is going to be with us. And for those of you in the New York area, you need a lawyer, whether you're getting a divorce, whether you're getting your landlord kicking you out of that basement or the attic or a studio or a one-bedroom or a two-bedroom or wherever or whatever. You're being kicked out and you think that it is wrong, call Shelon Washington. Okay, sorry about basement and attics and so forth. But if you do need, there's malpractice, one medical malpractice, whatever it is, give Shelon Washington's office a call. She's going to be on with us a few minutes. from now. What's happening to all of you guys? Victor Ben and the crew. I'm told that Victor Ben sits and he and his entire family, about 15 of them, they sit in their living room. 15 of them. The Bens have this history of living about 100 of them in one house. That's what you call family bond, right? Sandra Hanover and all the entire folks in her kitchen, about 12 of them watching. Dennis Atwell is also watching. Dennis is always by himself. This is not a love match game, but if any one of you, um, you know, Dennis Atwell, all by himself all the time. But good evening to all of you, Ingrid, Carter, and the entire crew. Good evening to everyone. Renee, Mackenzie, Talbot, and her entire family in that basement watching us. Oops, I take that back. People don't like when you say that they live in basements, right? I don't mind. I'm peeping through a little basement here now. But what's happening, Emily Durant and all of you, every single one of you. Brenda Ballers, good evening. All right, so let's get down to some serious business. Karen, welcome. We welcome you to the show. And for those of you who have already shared the link, thank you so much for doing so. GT Root Girl just joined us, probably just paid her internet bill. Congratulations, GT Root Girl, that you finally paid off the bill for your internet. What's happening? Let's head straight to Linden. Straight over to Linden, and look at what is happening there. Look at what is happening in Linden. If you guys can tell me what is happening here as we prepare to welcome the Honorable, Her Excellency, the Attorney at Law, and yep, look at that smile, yep, always ready. Our executive producer just said that she got in touch with Miss Washington, and here Miss Washington is here already. Good evening to you, ma'am. How are you?
Good evening, Mark. I am well. Good evening to all of your listeners out there tonight. Good evening, everyone.
Don't blame me. We actually tried to get in touch with you early in the day, but we were told by your secretary that you had such a hectic day. And I am sure that people must be calling you left, right, and center for such a busy day. And I was just saying, if they have a divorce, they should call you. If they have medical malpractice, they should call you. If the landlord kicking them out of the attic, I was once kicked out of an attic, so that's okay. If I knew you then, I probably would have had you defending me. But folks, get in touch with Miss Shellon Washington if you have any legal matters indeed. And so, Miss Washington, just before you got on, I was showing this photograph here. Let me see if you know where this is.
Yeah, it's Linden.
Linden. Oh, yes. And this is a school, Miss Washington, that taxpayers have already paid over $300 million going on 2 years now. And this is the result. School is going to be opened next week. Again, I repeat, school is going to be opened next week. And look at what $300+ million, and those hustlers, those flat-foot hustlers, have nothing to show, just garbage. You're taking the waste of taxpayers' money and this gangsterism by the PPP and their gangsters.
I'm not surprised. One of the factors we're working against is Linden is a predominantly Afro-Guyanese area. So if $3 billion was given budgeted to $300 million was budgeted towards building a school or erecting a building in Linden to educate the children, the people, the Afro-Guyanese of the country. I'm not surprised because the money would have gone to somebody who had some connection with the government. And that person with the connection with the government would have had one interest, the money. Not necessarily to get the job done, but their interest would have been to get the money pocketed and to spend as little of the amount as possible to build a school to house our most valuable possession, our children, our most valuable resources. That's the future of Guyana. And if the money that is being given out to the friends and the associates of people in the Guyana government to do this and to leave it half done. I don't know how long the project has been going on for, Mark, but this stuff like this shouldn't surprise the people of Ghana. Usually, I was even today speaking to a client who is complaining. And by the way, this is not just restricted. People need to know it's not just restricted to one particular ethnicity, but it goes to either side. As long as you're not supporting the interests of the PPP, you're going to feel the blunt of their vengeance. And they're complaining that what's happening with the government is if you know somebody, you can get jobs, you can get contracts like this to build a school. You can obtain a contract if you have somebody within the government that you're affiliated with. But if you don't have that type of affiliation, God help you. And then when they put the money into the hands of the wrong people, this is the end result. We have unfinished business, a lot of unfinished business in Ghana. And thanks, compliments to the PPP, who is failing the people of Ghana in many respects.
Shame and disgrace to the PPP. Shame on them. You did mention, Miss Washington, that not even half, they look what they did. They just put up some polls and that's it. No, nothing. This has been this way for over a year and a half. Nothing at all. Shame on those guys who pretend that they love Linden. And now look, I know the guys. And let me just set the record straight here. I know Kashif, I know Shanghai, I know the guys them from Hits and Jams, but this here is an insult. These are the guys who love to say that black people gotta get contracts too. Black people get contracts. Indian guys them get into contracts and y'all don't talk about them. Of course we talk about everybody. But if the regime is going to give contracts to people, whether they're Africans, whether they're of East Indian descent, whatever they are, give it to competent people. Don't play this race game and this sad game that because you are of African descent, we gotta support this trash. This is trash. This is a waste of money, and this is an insult to the people of Linden, Bamia Primary School, because you guys, Kashif and Shanghai and Hits and Jams, you guys are denying young people an opportunity there in Linden. Shame and disgrace to those guys. Ms. Washington, sorry, go ahead.
No, Mark, for the people who know who Kashif and Shanghai is, those people have been around to fill their pocket for many decades now. They don't look the interests of anyone. They have always been about filling their pocket. Those are hustlers, flat-foot hustlers. Those are people, I would say, if I were to rate them among the most educated and common sense people, they would be very, very low on the list because these were people who run businesses in Guyana. I don't know what is the level of the education of either of these people, but as far as I know, they were always hustlers. They had stalls in the market. They're just business people, hustlers. I'm not sure how a contract of this nature would end up to Kashif and Shanghai. Kashif and Shanghai are not contractors. They're not the type of people you would want to give this type of contract to. You would want to find an engineering company. You would want to find a construction company. You would want to find people who are competent to actually initiate and complete a project of this nature. You can't just take flat-foot hustlers or people who are used to selling clothing in the Mackenzie market and put this type of contract in their hands because they're not concerned about the welfare of the children. They're not concerned that our children needs a proper school to learn in. They're not concerned with any of those factors as to who, when, what, why. They're only concerned with how much money do I put in my pocket. For years, they've been running that football thing that they usually have in Linden. And that's all they're known for. That's all they're known for. They're hustlers. That's what they're known for. I'm not sure how a contract of this nature would end up in their hands.
Well, it ended up in their hands so that they can attempt to brainwash the people of Linden and Region 10 and so forth, and so that this corrupt regime can say, look, we're giving contracts to some black guys too. So what do you guys have to worry about? Look at the kind, and you have already aptly so described these individuals. They're not contractors, just like almost three quarter of the other guys them that the corrupt PPP gave out contracts to, whether it's these guys or whether it's the other kunumunus. We have noticed that Mohammed's. Azruddin Mohammed's and their company got a contract to build a fire service. These guys are known as contractors, close to 1 billion Guyana dollars. Well, they have completed it. I don't know to what sort of standard. But these particular guys, these hustlers out in Linden, look, they can't complete anything. And they gave as one of the foremen or one of the supervisors is a guy who got kicked out from Guy Oil, as a result of allegations of corruption, some Blair guy, a Kwame Blair or whatever it is. So you see the level of individuals, the types of individuals that are actually given these contracts to, which is to brainwash. And it's an insult to right-thinking Guyanese and a waste, Miss Washington, and all of our listeners, a waste of taxpayers' monies. Kids are returning to school on Monday. And look what? Nothing there. They're going to other schools now, and it's going to be a packed classrooms because the maybe 100 and something plus kids or 200 kids who are supposed to be going to this primary school cannot go there. Compliments of a corrupt, racist regime and their gangster friends they're giving out these contracts to. Anything else on this before we move on, Miss Washington?
Mark, they can't even say that it's the PPP trying to show that there's some sort of balance in terms of what they're doing. The Kashif and Shanghai has nothing to do with anybody else except themselves. They don't have no moral obligation or no moral affiliation to anything that is of standards. As I said before, their sole purpose or their sole goal has always been in Linden to be hustlers. That's all they've done for how many years, how many decades they've had that football competition going for. They've never contributed anything to Linden. So the PPP handing them a contract doesn't demonstrate any form of impartiality. They themselves are PPP. They got nothing to do with the people of Linden. They don't represent the people of Linden. They represent themselves and their ability to hustle money to satisfy themselves. They have nothing to do with people of Linden. So I don't know how the PPP could somehow believe that this could convince the people of Linden that they're doing anything for the people of Linden. It has nothing to do with them. Anyway, that's all I'd say. I don't have anything further to add on this issue. I think it's disgraceful.
Well said, Miss Washington. Shellon Washington, attorney at law out there in Brooklyn, New York. If you're in the area, wherever you are in New York or wherever you are, you have a quick legal question, ensure that you get in touch with attorney at law Shellon Washington. She is back with us again. Sorry, we lost her there for a quick minute. Miss Washington, here's another subject matter for us to deal with. According to the Village Voice, they're saying Guyana government accused of deliberate attempt to stifle, and I repeat, deliberate attempt to stifle the inevitable outcome of the elections petition. And this is according to Senior Counsel Roysdale Ford, Member of Parliament as well. What is your take on this here, Ms. Washington?
You know, it's funny that he used the word inevitable because we always know what the outcome of Guyana election is going to be. We all know. You don't need a crystal ball to determine what the outcome is going to be. It's always one-sided. And I think unless we find a way to remedy this corruption, I think it's going to continue. And I think Roysdale Ford is correct. It's inevitable. And their deliberate attempts to stifle, to be honest, he's saying inevitable, meaning the APNU is going to win. That's what's supposed to be the outcome. APNU should win, or they would win, because we've already seen from the local elections what happened, what the outcome was. So the inevitable mean it could be free and fair. The outcome is going to be detrimental or devastating to the PPP. However, we also know that the PPP's attempt to stifle what the outcome would look like has always been ongoing. It's been ongoing for decades now. They've managed to hold on to power for 23 years. And it's something that we have to find a way to remedy. And now they're making these attempts to continue their perpetual hold on power in Guyana. And we have to find a way to get their claws out of that hold on to the power in Guyana. So this attempt is aimed specifically at the voters list, I believe. And this is a big problem that needs to be addressed ASAP to prevent them from stifling the outcome of the election, to prevent them from continuing to hold on to power that they've been doing for such a long time.
To prevent them, indeed. 29 minutes after 9 o'clock. My name is Mark Benchap, and straight up tonight we have attorney at law Shellon Washington is with us, and we are now talking about what Roysdale Ford has said, and this is according to the Village Voice. Guyana government accused of deliberate attempt to stifle the inevitable outcome of the elections petition. I saw a comment earlier, and it says here, and this is from Lambert to you too. Hi, Lambert. How are you? Hope I pronounced your last name appropriately now for you. Lambert is saying, for over 3 years now, anyone with evidence of fraud has failed to come forward under oath and prove anything in court of law. That is according to Lambert. And Lambert is so correct, because as we speak, these three folks and others, it's an injustice against them that over 3 years now, and each time they appear in court, the magistrate or the prosecutor said that they are not ready to start the case. This is exactly what Lambert is speaking of. Ms. Washington?
Well, I mean, to some extent, I agree with Lambert, but fraud is generally, you have to have evidence to establish fraud. Fraud is difficult to establish, as a matter of fact, and you really can't establish fraud just based on testimony. You have to have hardcore evidence. You have to, bring documentation, paperwork, something. And I believe that it's impossible for the PPP to prove any fraud. And this is why these people have been just, on hold for so many years, because they just cannot establish fraud. Fraud is this, and especially criminal fraud. Remember, the standard for any crime is beyond reasonable doubt. And I think it's impossible at this point for them to establish, because they would have published it by now, Mark. It would have been somewhere in writing so that the public could read and see the type of fraud that was perpetuated as they claim. So I don't believe there was any fraud, period. And in the same instance, like the position of Roysdale Ford with the election petition, the people have been doing everything that they can, within their power. You see, the courts in Guyana, they don't act independent. They act under the control of the PPP to some extent, to a great extent, as a matter of fact.
How fair is that, though, for a judicial? How much confidence people will lose if you have a regime that is controlling, for the most part, the judiciary? You're a lawyer. Speak to us about that, please.
You can't have confidence at all, because the judiciary is supposed to be independent. The legislative arm should be independent, the judiciary. And if you have intermingling of powers under any country, it's difficult. They cannot function effectively and dispense of the law free and fairly if there is interference by the legislative arm. You have the government constantly, you have the PPP constantly. And this is why I think when it comes to appointing a chief justice or appointing anybody, the chancellor, it's going to take them a hard time, because a lot of the most powerful and the most influential judges in Guyana are Afro-Guyanese. And if they want to put somebody there, most of those judges, at least the ones that I know, they're very impartial. And their thing is, if you don't support the PPP policies and their politics, they can't appoint you as a chancellor. They can't appoint you as a chief justice. They can't put you in certain positions. And what they try to do is keep their control over the number of judges that are appointed every year or whenever in the courts in Guyana, or whenever the vacancy becomes available. So I think it's a system that the way the PPP controls it, it's meant to be that way, so that any decision that is going to pass through the court is going to get to the Court of Appeal. They must always have a greater say. So it's 3 justices in the Court of Appeal, and they maintain at all times, they must have their balance in terms of having 2 people who's going to sit there that is going to rule in accordance with what they want, in give a decision that is not balanced. I mean, when they had Justice Reynolds there, I can't remember, I think is I can't remember the other judge, but it's some Barnes. I forgot what.
Judge Barnes, yeah.
Yeah, when they had, and somebody else, I think the other judge was a PPP, a dead PPP.
You got just the acting chancellor of the judiciary, Justice Barnes, and then you had Justice Reynolds, and then
The third person,
Justice Rishi Prasad.
Prasad.
Yeah.
Prasad.
Don't be fooled by the last name, because Justice Gino Prasad.
Oh, Gino Prasad. Okay.
No. You're talking about Justice Rishi Prasad. But don't be fooled by the last name, because Justice Gino Prasad.
That's what I thought, because when you said Gino Prasad, because Gino Prasad he's never been to the Court of Appeal yet. He's in the High Court.
No.
So the thing is, what the PPP always try to do, and that's why they don't usually confirm a lot of these appointments, because they don't want to put somebody that they're going to regret, that is going to dispense of the law fairly, because they want somebody that they can control. They always want to have a puppet there that they can control. And I think what the people of Guyana have to understand is that if you can have a court system that could do justice, that could balance the system, you could be coming closer and closer to democracy, because it's the courts is what helps to maintain a healthy balance in any democracy. Look at the United States. A lot of the times, some of the wrongs, some of the discrimination, a lot of the electoral issues that happens here, who steps in? The courts are the ones that maintains that balance and do justice and equity in those cases. If it wasn't for a fair court system, or at least something that comes close to fairness in the United States, the democracy wouldn't work. And it's the same thing in Guyana. If you have a court system that is heavily controlled by the PPP, by Ifan Ali or Barra Jagdeo, you will never have a system that could be efficiently operated, where we can say, well, we have fairness here, we have equity here, the rule of law is properly being balanced and enforced fairly across the board.
This goes back to what the Village Voice is saying here, and the Village Voice ran this article on what Senior Counsel Royce Ford is saying. And I smiled when I saw this article. I agree that the PPP, indeed, the PPP is afraid of the elections petition. But here it is again. It says the Guyana government accused of deliberate attempt to stifle the inevitable. And this goes back to what you just said, that they seem to be in control of the court. Who do we blame here? This corrupt regime, or those officers of the court who are, thus far, they're refusing to render a decision on this matter?
You see, Mark, it's a difficult question to really answer, because, if you're appointed to a position, or you're put into a position under a government, you ask yourself, who should your loyalties be to? And in the court system, because of the oath taken by any attorney, as you know, those judges are attorneys also. The oath you've taken is that you're going to dispense the law fairly, without fear or favor, without fear or favor. So to a larger extent, you have to blame the person who's sitting on the bench, because you've taken an oath that you're going to dispense of this law without fear or favor. So it means that I'm not going to favor anybody sitting in the PPP government, or I'm not going to be fearful of you. But a lot of times too, Mark, these people are thinking they have their families to feed. They're thinking about the monetary aspects of it. And because of the whole way the system is set up, you see the courts in the United States, right? So in the states courts, those people are elected. The judges are elected. And in some instances, the judges are appointed. So, for instance, if judges are elected and they're removed for whatever reason, and there becomes a vacancy, whoever the mayor is, or they're gonna appoint somebody based on a recommendation from the Judiciary Committee. Somebody's going to be appointed as a judge under a particular mayor. But in the case of Guyana, that doesn't play a factor. There's no electing of judges. You are appointed under the government, whoever is in power at that particular time. So then the problem comes now, who your loyalties lie. Where does your loyalty lie? And a lot of times people in Ghana are afraid to lose their job. They're afraid to lose their position because they're thinking, if I'm not sitting on this bench and I'm not getting a paycheck, what happens? And we got to be, it's a whole system. So now instead of sitting there and dispensing of the law, fairly without any favor to anybody, they are taking favors from people. They're doing things based on their affiliation with a particular person when it shouldn't be. So I think you got to blame both sides. You're blaming the PPP because they're deliberately interfering with the ability of the court system to operate fairly and freely without any interference by them. And then you blame the person sitting on the bench because they're violating an oath that they've taken to operate and to dispense of the law without fear or favor. So you can't fear the PPP. Neither can you do any favors for your friends or anybody under the PPP government. You're supposed to do your job. So in this instance, even if the PPP was trying to tell them not to release the decision or trying to get in the way of the decision being released, the judges, the justices are supposed to say, no, we have a job to do. And in order for Guyana to operate freely and as a democracy, we cannot allow you to step into our way. We have to do our job.
Well said. 40 minutes after 9 o'clock, Miss Washington, attorney at law. I want to touch on this here. This has to do with this photograph where the installed quote unquote president is standing there like a little schoolboy, probably not understanding what Tony Blair is saying there. I need to get your take on this photograph. We need to talk about some other issues, but we also need to take a quick commercial break and be right back with our guest this evening, Shellon Washington, attorney at law.
So this is attorney Shellon Washington, owner and founder of the Washington Law Firm, located at 455 Utica Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. We're specialized in medical malpractice, personal injuries, matrimonial law, and landlord and tenant. If you're in need of legal representation, please give us a call today. The number to call is 718-877-3100. Consultation is free at no cost to you. So call us today to see if we can be of any assistance to your legal needs. Again, the phone number to call us is 718-877-3100.
All right, the number is there. The address is there. Give Miss Washington's office a call. And remember, the key word there is consultation. Free. Well, the key word is free. But don't call for a consultation for an hour and so forth. At least, I don't know how long it goes for, but a free consultation on whatever it is, legal matters you have. Call Miss Washington's law firm, and you'll get all the answers concerning your legal case. Now, Miss Washington, and to all of you who are listening to us right now, again, good evening to you guys. Miss Washington, I want to touch on, a lot of people are saying that this is an embarrassment. But obviously, Irfan Ali and Jack Deo, they are shameless creatures. What is your take, ma'am, looking at this photograph? What's percolating through your mind?
I think most Guyanese are aware by now that the purpose or the reason why Irfan Ali was given the position to run for president is because he is what we call a puppet under Bara Jagdeo. Bara Jagdeo needed somebody he can control. He needed somebody who he can maneuver. And really and truly, Bara Jagdeo is the head of state. But Irfan Ali is only sitting in the position because of the title Bara Jagdeo is incapable of holding based on the Constitution. Based on the Constitution of Guyana, no sitting president is allowed to sit there for more than 3 terms. Bara Jagdeo has exhausted all of those terms, but he wants to hold on to power. He wants to remain a leader in Guyana as long as he possibly can. And one of the ways he can do that is by taking somebody who's uneducated, ill-informed, not capable or suitable to sit in the position of a president, and use that person as a puppet while under the surface, he really does the job of a president. So this picture adequately, they say a picture speaks 1,000 words. Well, this one is telling us 1,000 words right here. It's demonstrating to the people of Ghana who the real head of state is. And that person is Bar Jagdeo, really under the surface. And Afan Ali is really just a surface. He's just on the surface. He's just a show. He just carries the title, but he doesn't carry the weight. He doesn't carry the authority. The person with the real authority here, and this picture tells you that, is really Barrett Jagdeo. As you can see him engaging in the conversation with Tony Blair, you can see who is really carrying the conversation, carrying the weight of the conversation or the attention of Tony Blair. But you see there, Evan Ali looks like he's just standing there trying to figure out what is happening, how could he contribute, if he can contribute at all to that conversation, because he doesn't have the ability, he doesn't have the capabilities, he doesn't have what it takes to really stand as a head of state. And we have seen it. We've seen Afan Ali embarrass the people of Ghana because of the way he speaks. He cannot properly represent us as a people. It makes looks like a puppet show, so this picture is really telling the Guyanese people what the real deal of what's happening in Guyana is. And you don't even need to ask questions. The picture is self-explanatory. A picture tells 1,000 words.
1,000 words indeed, Miss Washington, telling it like it is. I want to ask you this question concerning the fact that Guyanese are afraid to speak out, are afraid to stand up against the injustices and against an oppressive, corrupt, racist regime as the PPPC is. Why do you suppose even people in positions, whether they're lawyers, whether they're doctors, whether they're magistrates or former magistrates or whatever they are afraid for the most part of speaking out, all because they just probably don't want to get locked up or targeted or being persecuted or so forth? What is your take on that sort of fear factor in Guyana?
I think we have to be, on one hand, I want to say that people need to really stand up and they really need to speak up and they really need to be a voice for the voiceless. They need to be the force for the people who are incapable of standing up and being a force for themselves. But on the other hand, I do understand that when you're under a dictatorship, when you're being oppressed, when you risk losing the means and the method of feeding your family, when you risk the possibility of becoming homeless. I mean, in Guyana, the term homeless is really not a thing because we have so much land. We have so many different ways that people can survive by farming or doing other things. But I do understand, like, a lot of people are really fearful of the PPP and what they're capable of. We've had instances where there was extrajudicial killing. We've had instances where innocent people are prosecuted. They're incarcerated and prosecuted because of their views against the PPP government. And I do understand magistrates, attorneys, they're all in very precarious situation, especially the magistrate. Those who are employed by the government of Ghana risk losing their salary. And a lot of times people think about those factors versus putting the interests of the general public, at hand. We don't have people who we would consider revolutionary people, revolutionists, people who would stand up for justice, stand up for things that are right and fight for a just cause, because a lot of people are fearful of the repercussions of their actions under the PPP government, whereas it shouldn't be that way. People should be allowed to speak up. People should be allowed to fight. People should be allowed to put up a resistance to anything that they find to be oppressive, and it's against the nature of what is considered a democracy in any country. Guyana is not a democratic country. We all know this. It's more of a dictatorship because we have a very oppressive regime, and the people have got to realize that at some point you got to stand up and say enough is enough and fight back. We see what's happening in Africa. We see that there's revolutionary people. They're taking a stand. At some point, you've got to take a stand. And at some point, whether you be an attorney, you be a magistrate, you've got to stop thinking about the $2 you're going to get on your table taken from you and realize that there have to be other ways to earn an income. There have to be other ways if the government of Ghana choose to oppress you because you want to stand up for what is true and what is right. There has to be a better way out. And people have got to realize that to be correct, to be right, to be on the side of what is called ethically correct and morally correct is better than to be on the side what is morally wrong and reprehensible just because you want to be able to put food on your table. And I think that's the mentality of a lot of people in Guyana, is they want to be able to put food on their table, so they're going to sit and they're going to stand for anything that comes. There's a saying that if you don't stand for something, you're going to fall for anything. And that's a lot of what is happening in Guyana. A lot of Guyanese people are falling for anything because they don't have any position that they stand for.
Well said. 49 minutes after 9 o'clock, Miss Washington here. For those of you who are now joining us, we welcome you to the program. Just the other day, Miss Washington, they had a protest in front of the Guyana Elections Commission, of course, talking about the voters list that is heavily padded, probably at over 100,000 extra votes, dead people who should have been off the list, they're on there. And for a population that we have known for over quite a long time, 750,000, it hasn't gone up, not even one. It hasn't gone down, not even one. It is still 750,000. But the list has over 850 something thousand persons. What happened there? Nobody is talking about cleansing the list, but a couple of folks, Rhonda Lane and others, went out there to protest, just about 6 or 7 of them. And I made this point a couple nights back that when the PPP, when they were in the opposition, they were protesting about ensuring that the then chairman of the Guyana Elections Commission, Dr. Steve Surge Bally, is removed because the PPP wasn't comfortable losing the 2015 elections at all. They have lost it fair and square. And this is how they did it. They were hitting the streets every single day. Members of parliament and so forth for the PPP were hitting the streets. We're hardly seeing that from members of the opposition. Speak to them directly, please. The members of parliament especially.
The members of parliament needs to understand, you can't just stand on a platform and speak of changes and expect changes to happen. Some of the most revolutionary people, civil rights leaders that we've seen in our times and in previous times in our history books are the people who have taken things to a level where they get into the streets to show that they're serious about what is happening. They took to the streets. They don't just sit and tell the people we want to see changes. They don't just go into parliament and say we want to see changes, but did nothing about it. And if the voters list needs cleansing, and it's crowded with people who are no longer residing in Guyana, it's crowded with dead voters, it's crowded with all sorts of names, fraudulent names, and you sit in parliament, the opposition sits and do nothing. They are telling the PPP, hey, we acquiesce to what you're doing. But on the other hand, if you get up, if they rally the people together, if they come out and take the people to the streets and protest until they see changes on the voter list, the PPP will have no choice but to ensure that the list is cleansed prior to the election. And I think the opposition they've been way too silent. They've been sitting down idly and allowing this to go on. And we've seen from the past, we've seen in the elections prior to the 2015, where President Granger won. We've seen what has happened in the past and how the PPP was able to hold on to power because of fraudulent conduct. And if we sit idly and allow the fraud to be perpetuated from one election to the next, we're telling the PPP, hey, we believe your conduct is wrongful, but we're acquiescing because we're doing nothing. And the opposition needs to stop just not doing anything and do something. Speak up every day, go on TV, talk about the voters list that needs to be cleansed, make it a public forum, make it an international issue. Let the world know what is happening under the PPP government and what they're attempting to do. Changes must come. Changes only comes through revolution. When revolution happens, changes has to come. We've seen, look at our history. Most of the time something drastic happens is through either some revolt, some revolution, people protesting. The greatest civil rights leader, one of the greatest civil rights leader here in the United States of America, If you look at Dr. Martin Luther King, he took the people to the streets. They protest daily until they saw some results. And some of the things that happened didn't happen during the lifetime of Dr. Martin Luther King. It happened after. And we don't have leaders like that. We've owned the greatest leaders we've had in Ghana is during the time of the revolution. We could name the four ones who led those revolts to gain emancipation for us. But after emancipation, we don't see people protesting this type of repressiveness we've seen in Guyana. We have to have a real leader. Somebody will take the people out and take them to the next level where they will protest until changes happen. The PPP cannot stay there forever. They cannot continue in their fraudulent conduct if the people of Ghana, if the opposition take it to the streets daily until we see results.
Well said, Miss Washington. 55 minutes after 9 o'clock, take it to the streets until we see results. And taking it to the streets, not by 6 persons or 7 persons or so forth. I know the Bible says, and Miss Washington, you're also a lawyer, apart from you being a competent attorney. The Bible says even one is a majority. But in some instances, we've just got to go out there in the numbers instead of just talking. And this is not to disrespect those who are just commenting. I know you guys want to play your role, yes, but we want to see more of our elected MPs who are supposed to be working on behalf of the people to go out there. It doesn't matter who called the protest or whatever. The protest is a protest for something that is right. You cannot wait until elections time is just about a week or a month ago and then to jump on a mountaintop and talk about electoral reforms or to talk about a clean voters list. Now is the time. There are some members of parliament who are working, so I don't want individuals to feel that we are here taking a snap at all of the members of parliament, but we do know that they have some very lazy work. Having said all of that now, Ms. Washington, you, and we also salute those who lost their lives and so forth, standing up against an oppressive regime. We have a Ronald Waddle, assassinated under the PPP regime, under Jack Taylor's regime, Courtney Crummy-Wing, assassinated under Donald Ramatar's regime, the PPP regime again. And so these people have been going after people and murdering them, and they're allowed to go back into office and pretend as though nothing has happened. And, I just want to show just to say that the struggle, you've just got to stand up against them. This reminds me, and I know you would love this one here, Miss Washington, that when I was given a couple of chances to go to the chapel at Camp Street Prisons, I do have a photograph of that. Coincidentally, someone just inboxed me just 2 days ago. Here's a photograph of me in church. And guess where?
Camp Street.
That's me. You recognize me, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So, Miss Washington, this leads me now to the many broken promises. I know some folks might want to see what I look like then at Camp Street's prison. Right there, that's me. I was allowed to, I got out of solitary confinement and was taken to the prison's chapel there to attend church service. And my favorite song then, Miss Washington, you might put a smile on your face for that. And so may some of our listeners was, I am under the rock. The rock is higher than high. Jehovah Jireh. I am under the... Go tell my enemy. Can we get an amen for that? And I used to love that song because I was actually preaching directly to the corrupt, racist, oppressive regime. And they were the ones when I say, go tell my enemies, I am under that rock. Anyways, Miss Washington, I'm not here to preach. Sometimes I get a bit carried away, but you're the preacher. I'm not. Now, Village Voice says here, Benchop flays PPP for failed campaign promise to return free university education. What is your take on the broken promise coming from a corrupt PPP regime?
It would be a shame if the people of Ghana believe anything that the PPP represents to them as part of their election campaign. The PPP, you should know, people of Ghana, that they're deceptive. Their campaign is full of lies and deception. The PPP, the people who leads the PPP, full of lies, lies, and deception. Barajagdio, full of lies and deception. That's all he is. Lies and deception. He's the father of lies. So I do not understand if the PPP brings a campaign to Ghana that represents free university education to the people of Ghana. Why would they believe that? Why would they believe anything coming out of the mouth of Barajagdio? Why would they believe anything coming out the mouth of Afenali, who have multiple fraud charges? Why would the people of Ghana believe anything that those people represent? All they stand for is corruption, and murder and oppression and dictatorship. That's what the PPP regime stands for. And any regime that steps into that office and stands for that, I will not support their politics. I will not support their policies. And I think we got to get to the point where we recognize the world is changing rapidly, and the internet is changing the world. Everything is changing so quickly, so that if the PPP wants to go and represent lies, now back in the days when the PPP went and they lied to the public, there was no way to replay that because people were subject to television and radio. But now with smartphone, with the internet, people can literally record your lies and replay it multiple times for the world to see. I'm pretty sure, Mark, you could find a clip from the PPP representing free university education. And people of Guyana can see now that there is no such thing. They have not gotten the free education as represented by the PPP. So they would know that Barajagdio is the father of lies, and he has got to go. I think anybody who takes over the presidency as of the next election, if it's not them, they need to be for the revision of the Constitution, so that you make it that where somebody who has served as a sitting president should not even be allowed again in Parliament. They should be forced into retirement, because there you have this person sitting there in perpetuity. He's not going on. I don't know if he wants to be till death. Does he part from the governmency, from the presidency of Ghana? Till death do you part, Mr. Jagdeo? You need to step down, and they need to be for the reform in the laws that where there's a president to serve for at least 3 terms, he must be forced to retire. He must not be allowed in Parliament, must not be allowed a hands in the government in Ghana. Because this is the type of things you got. You got somebody sitting there and controlling. They choose a puppet like Afenali and put him as a front. And the people of Ghana need to recognize Afenali is not your president. He's a front. He's a sham. A sham president is what you have there. The real person with the weight behind him is the controller, the mastermind. In criminal law, there's something called a mastermind. So you have the person who planned the crime, and then you have the person who carries out the act, the actus reus. Well, in this case, the mastermind is Barajagdio, and the person who actually carries out the crime is Afenali. Afenali is not the brain, he's just the actor. And you guys need to see that. The real brain behind the corruption that's happening in Guyana is Barajagdio, not Afenali.
The real corrupt vagabonds. But don't forget, this chap is not an angel. 19 fraud charges against him. He's not an angel. He has been saved by the bell for now by a corrupt DPP office. A corrupt DPP office.
He's not, but he's a puppet, Mark.
Yes, we all agree on that. He is a puppet. He's also 19 fraud charges, and I believe the Canadians might be looking for him too. They've revoked his visa. It just so happens that because of the UN, some law in the UN there that actually allows head of state to travel. Having said all of that, though, this political vagabond recently said that he turned to a person, a reporter of African descent, and asked whether she is a Christian or not, or whether she reads the Bible, and blah, blah, blah. I find that to be very insulting.
It is.
Anyways, let's say, Miss Washington, that Aubrey Norton needs to confess his sins to this one. Need to confess his sins to him, Irfan Ali. What is your take as a Christian, as a pastor, also apart from a lawyer? What is your take on this guy's utterances?
I think it's very disrespectful to even ask any Afro-Guyanese whether or not they're Christian. For people who don't know, people need to know this. I do respect Christianity. I myself, I'm a baptized believer, but people need to know this, that Christianity, and I think everybody knows this, these people know it too. It was used as a method, as a tool to control the minds of slaves. That's all Christianity was. Prior to Christianity, African people did practice their religion, but not the way the colonial masters made them do it. And for you to ask somebody if they read the Bible, like, what is he insinuating in that context, and why is he saying that Aubrey Norton needs to confess his sins? Confess what sins? Is he the Pope? And furthermore, people need to understand that as people who believe in the Bible, we believe in it, but we shouldn't have people use it as a tool that the way the colonial masters used it against us. And nobody should reference the Bible when it comes to a black person. We know we should read the Bible. We believe in it, but it's not a tool to control us, and we wouldn't be controlled by anybody. And I think that's grossly disrespectful. Would he be happy if somebody said, "Do you read the Quran?" Because I think he is Muslim. Would he be happy? Would he feel okay if somebody asked him if he read the Quran? When it comes to black people, nobody should ask us whether or not we read the Bible. That it was used as a repressive tool against us. And to reference it in that manner and then to ask if somebody should confess their sins to him, it's grossly disrespectful. And this president needs to be censored. I don't know, sometimes he wakes up on the wrong side of the bed. Sometimes he doesn't use his brain in the right manner. He needs to be censored. He needs somebody to
Most
guide
of the
him.
times, he doesn't use his brain. Most of the times, and we are beginning to wonder, Miss Washington, whether he has a brain or not. The evidence is clear that he may not.
Yes.
As we look at the time, Miss Washington, I know our folks had a busy day. You had a busy day as well. Well, for me, I just babysit. I've had a busy day too. When we return, I want to ask you this question here concerning some of our young Indian brothers in Guyana are disguising themselves, making themselves look as though they are of African descent when they go out on a robbery. I want your take on this here, and as we will close things up when we return right after this break.
So this is attorney Shellen Washington, owner and founder of the Washington law firm located at 455 Utica Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. We're specialized in medical malpractice, personal injuries, matrimonial law, and landlord and tenant. If you're in need of legal representation, please give us a call today. The number to call is 718-877-3100. Consultation is free at no cost to you. So call us today to see if we can be of any assistance to your legal needs. Again, the phone number to call us is 718-877-3100.
All right, thank you so much, Bibi Khan. Salam alaikum to you. Bibi Khan is saying that air fraud is actually a Harkati, and he's not a real Muslim. That's according to Miss Bibi Khan, and I'm sure that Jamil Aziz and other real Muslims who are watching this show here this evening. Good evening to you guys. Salam alaikum. Miss Washington, as we prepare to close off this evening's program, let's head back to just before we took that commercial break. About this guy, obviously pretending to plait his hair, put braids, put little rubber bands, and so forth. So when they go out in a robbery, the first sight that the people would see is, hey, this is a guy. The first thing that comes to mind, this is a person of African descent. A black guy just robbed us. What is your take on this, Miss Washington?
Mark, there's so many things going through my mind just looking at this picture. I mean, we as a race have been repressed and oppressed for such a long time. I mean, even in the United States, a lot of people try to do robbery by disguising themselves as of African descent. And I think it's the stigma. It's a weight. It's something that we've been carrying around for so long. And no one respects us. So they're going to disguise themselves and pretend to be us just so somebody could say another black person, another black man commit a robbery. I think it has to be remedied. The situation with the way the world paints us, with the way people attempt to create the narrative that it's always the black person that is doing, the black person in the room that is committing the offense, that is committing the crime. This thing has to be remedied. And I think if we could remove that stigma from ourselves, that the way people look, the way the world paints us, I think it would help to a great extent, so that if somebody sees a picture like this, it wouldn't just jump to a conclusion and say, oh, it's a black person, just because they're misappropriating our hairstyles, misappropriating something that ethnically or culturally belongs to our community. And I mean, we can't stop ethnic appropriation. People misappropriating our hairstyle, our cultural clothing. We really can't stop that. But I think what we can actually attempt to stop is the stigma that people tend to paint black people. And I think the way we can start doing that is by painting positive images about ourselves, positive images on TV. And I think that's why countries like Nigeria, they have banned all foreign commercial. So all you'll see on Nigerian TV is commercial that is locally made. You see a lot of black people on TV. And I think if we start painting that narrative, creating that narrative, a better narrative about ourselves on TV, on radio, on every single show, I think the world could start seeing and viewing us in a different light, so that when they see this type of image, I feel hurt. I feel offended that anybody would try to create an impression that they're African, Afro-Guyanese, and go and commit an offense. Why can't you be yourself? Wear your hair like an Indian person that you are. Go commit your offense as who you are. Don't pretend to be us and then create another impression that we've already stigmatized, and create that narrative that it's somebody's black that is committing the offense. Because we're divided in Guyana. We're already divided. We have a government that creates this apartheid government, and then we have the regular Indian person in the street now going and perpetuate the ignorance that paints us in a bad, negative light. We've got to change the narrative.
Absolutely, Miss Shallon Washington, as we prepare to go this evening, 11 minutes after 10 o'clock. Many of you, if at all you remember, there was a situation where a PPP operative by the name of G1 Chowti was shot and killed somewhere in Sparendam as he and his gang, this was during the quote-unquote crimes-free era, that the G1 Chowti, a known PPP operative, along with his gang, when many people thought that it was just one set of quote-unquote gang committing these crimes and murders and robberies, the PPP apparently had their own gangs out there, murder squads out there committing lots and lots of murders and robberies. And this PPP operative by the name of G1 Chowti was caught. He was shot and killed as he opened fire, exchanged fire with members of the Guyana police force. He was killed. And when they actually saw who he was at that time, he had on Rasta wig, and also he was a licensed firearm, the holder of a licensed firearm. And so he was pointed right back there to the PPP. So the PPP had their gangs, had their folks out there dressed in Rasta wig. And then there was another guy by the name of Morgan, was caught somewhere in the vicinity of the National Cultural Center on Homestretch Avenue, and he was caught with Rasta wig and all of these sort of things. So there is a history of these things, guys. There is a history. Ms. Washington, as always, we thank you so much for your time. Again, before we close, tell us again how you feel about this embarrassing, disgraceful event out there in Linden, where 300 plus million taxpayers' money spent to rebuild a school, and hundreds of kids are heading back to school as of Monday, but in a crumped up classrooms. Your take on this embarrassment, please, ma'am, before we go.
The first thing I would advise the people in Linden to stop supporting Kashif and Shanghai. First of all, people of Linden recognize that Kashif and Shanghai are nothing without your money. And if you stop taking your money and spending it to go to Kashif and Shanghai football, you will bring them down to nothing. You are the ones who make Kashif and Shanghai what they are. And if Kashif and Shanghai is going to stoop with the government, take money to build schools for your children, and fail to perform the job, then Kashif and Shanghai don't deserve a place in Linden. They're not true Lindeners. True Lindeners would look out for the interests of the people of Linden by ensuring that if money is given to build a school, that the school is properly built and it's adequately capable of housing the number of students that it is built for. If Kashif and Shanghai receive millions of dollars as part of a project they're supposed to be completing in Linden, and they fail to perform under the PPP, because as you know, they probably are PPP in order for the PPP to give them any sort of project, and they fail to complete the project, fail to perform the job, fail to provide the school for your children, people of Linden, wise up. Cancel Kashif and Shanghai. Cancel them by stop supporting them. If we stop supporting bad behavior, we can correct our society and bring it to the standard that we would like to see. We don't have to run and go to any other country. We can correct the problem right home by taking the viruses and killing them. And the viruses are those who feed off of our society and fail to give back to the society. And Kashif and Shanghai are those viruses in Linden. And I advise you to cancel Kashif and Shanghai. Cancel them. When you cancel people like those, you show them that you're serious about your business, about your children. Our future are the children of Linden. And if they're going to be given money to provide the facility for our students to continue to learn and to be educated, and they're going to take that money and use it for themselves to provide themselves with mansion and whatever else they're doing with that money, cancel them. Our children are more important than Kashif and Shanghai. I encourage all the people of Linden, even the people of Georgetown, stop supporting Kashif and Shanghai's football and cancel them. If you stop, if you kill the virus, cut the source of its supply off, the virus will die. And we need to cancel those people who are parasites to our society and doesn't add any credit or any value to our people and our society. Cancel Kashif and Shanghai. And this embarrassment, things like this will stop eventually.
Eventually. Thank you so much, Ms. Washington. Not only cancel Kashif and Shanghai, I'm sure there are lots of other businesses out there that are joining with the oppressors to persecute you guys. Stop supporting those businesses. Just stop supporting those businesses that are helping to persecute you as a people. And in stopping to support the businesses, it doesn't matter the ethnicity of the business owners. As long as they are persecuting you, they are not on the side of justice. Do not spend your money with them. If you're afraid to hit the streets, then hold back on your monies and support of those businesses that are part and parcel of the oppressive regime. Ms. Washington, I know usually before we go, you thank people, those who go out and support your law firm and so forth. Here's your opportunity before we go, please, ma'am.
Yeah, I want to say thank you guys so much for staying here tonight, for watching this show. Thank you for your contributions. My office is located at 455 Utica Avenue. You've heard the areas that I practice. I thank you so much for your support. Your support really helps. I always talk about those of you who have referred me to your friends, your family, your neighbors. And I'm grateful for all of you who have in some way contributed towards my practice, and I encourage you to continue to do such. Consultation is free. If you need legal advice, you call, and I'm always there whenever I'm available to provide you with that free consultation. Thank you guys so much for all your support. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you. I'm grateful to all of you. Thank you so much.
And thank you so much to Ms. Washington. Please give my regards to all those wonderful folks at your law firm. Thank you, ma'am. And I'm gonna leave this evening with this here. back in, that's where, right? I'm going to leave them with something really nice this evening as we direct it at those corrupt individuals in the PPP, really, really corrupt individuals in the PPP regime. I want you to hear a piece of this here, Miss Washington, before you go, so that you can know that I also have a bit of a godly side in me too. Please just take note of that. Here go.
I am under the rock. The rock is higher than I. Jehovah guide me. I'm under the rock. Go tell my enemies I'm under the rock.
Miss Washington, thank you so much as always for yet another lovely show right here on 107.1 FM. We are under that rock, and we've got to
Indeed.
tell that to the enemies, the political enemies. And thank you so much, Miss Washington. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mark. Good night.
Yeah, thank you. And to all of our listeners, wherever you are, we have to send that message. Go tell our enemies, those political enemies, that what the message is. But we've got to go, though. I'll be back tomorrow, same place, same time. Some people are mistaking me for Brother Mark, Pastor Mark, Pope. Oops, sorry. Kind of has a Pope, right? All right. Those of you who are celebrating your birth anniversaries, good evening and happy birthday. If you're wedding, whatever it is, happy wedding anniversary. But for now, and for those of you who are a bit of sorrow moment, passing of some loved one, our condolences to you and the entire family. But for now, I've got to rush out of here. Until tomorrow, same place, same time. God bless you.
So, this is attorney Shellen Washington, owner and founder of the Washington Law Firm, located at 455 Utica Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. We're specialized in medical malpractice, personal injuries, matrimonial law, and landlord and tenant. If you're in need of legal representation, please give us a call today. The number to call is 718-877-3100. Consultation is free at no cost to you. So call us today to see if we can be of any assistance to your legal needs. Again, the phone number to call us is 718-877-3100.
Jehovah guide me, I'm under the rock. Go tell my enemies I'm under the rock. Jehovah guide me, I'm under the rock. Say I am under the rock, and the rock is higher than I. Jehovah guide me, I'm under the rock. Don't tell my enemies I'm under the rock. Jehovah guide me, I'm under the rock.